to grow and to be educated, open for our students. And when you look at what those priorities are, I think it did all come together in that regard. But it took every single person cooperating, communicating, and coordinating to have that work for our students, even as some of them had to get home somewhere across the world. We've got student athletes all over the world, from Czechoslovakia and Korea to a few blocks down in Stockton. So we just want to make sure they're all safe and healthy and happy right now.
What was it like for you working with the NCAA when essentially the spring seasons were canceled? What were those meetings like for you?
I'm going to say in the end, it was a logical decision. You have to talk about the extremes of what your options are when you're looking at a situation like that. You just can't walk down the middle of the road and make a decision, but you have to look at all the ifs. What happens if this occurs? And I give people credit for that. Some of the decisions didn't quite come fast enough, but that's not about blame. That's just about this being so unique and so different. But it came together in the end, and I do think it was a logical decision to cancel the spring sports. I'm ecstatic that both our men's and women's basketball teams and our swimming program got a chance to compete through their conference events. Not every teams did in that regard, so I was very happy for them. Disappointing for our spring sports beyond even, I don't have the words to describe it. Not only was it unabruptly ending their spring season for some, it unabruptly ended their college career, and that's just heartbreaking.
Can you break down the returning of eligibility in terms that people can understand and how that's going to work for the spring athletes?
Sure. There were two key decisions made, and it was all focused on the spring sports in the end. Although the winter sports was discussed, it was just spring sports where a decision was made, number one, to give each student athlete in a spring sport the opportunity for a season of competition waiver, which means that if they competed this spring, they get that season back. Typically, you can compete 4 years. So they didn't lose a year this year. The other side of this is also to give each of those student athletes an extension of what we call their 5-year clock. So when a student initially enrolls full-time in college, they have 5 years from that point in order to compete the 4 years. So most importantly, this gave our seniors the opportunity, if they wanted, to return next year, even if it was their 6th year, and even if this was their 4th competitive year. So they can come back and get a new opportunity. Now, we've got an interesting mix. It's the nature of our students. I think it's around 34 students who would have exhausted their eligibility this spring. And right now, about a third of them are coming back. I'm excited for those folks. It's around maybe a dozen, 10 to 12 at this point, with a few more still deciding. But it presents a new opportunity. Some may come back and get their master's degree, which wasn't initially in their plans. But on the other hand, we have other students who were already planning on graduating and getting their, for example, an MBA at another institution. So they're going to move on. But I want to make sure that whatever the decision is by the student, that we bring their opportunities to a close in a very positive manner. So whether it's at Pacific or somewhere else, they get that opportunity.
This situation, you said it's unprecedented. Of course it is. It also presents, I'm sure, so many challenges on a broad scale too. What are a couple of the challenges at the top of your list that this is presenting to you? And they could be anything. They could be logistical challenges. They could be specific to certain sports. What would that be?
I think initially, but we're a little past this, were the logistical challenges. It was the idea of, how do we take an entire student body and an entire staff in athletics, in essence, and we're all doing what we do remotely. How do we do that and be successful at the same time? So the logistics initially were a different kind of opportunity that we had to figure out how to take advantage of. We had to figure out different methods. I've done more WebEx, more Zoom, you name it. It's now on my computer to be able to connect with people, so it isn't just phone calls, but being able to see people and connect to them in that way is a piece of this puzzle. I think it's really important. But once you get past the logistics, the main concerns at this point, from my perspective, are academic success. We have been on a trajectory of improving our academic success every single year the last few years, and I want to make sure we're able to sustain that. And what are the challenges for our students to do that? If they're in a different country or a different part of this country, do they have internet? Is it stable internet? Do they have access to the remote learning opportunities? Do they need support in that process, and how do we connect them to that support? So academic success is a piece of the puzzle. I think the priorities start with the student-athlete well-being, whether that's academic or mental and emotional well-being, given the nature of what's going on. So mental health is on that list as well. As we look down the road, I think any athletic director in the country is going to be talking about what's the potential impact on our resources, be it financial resources, academic resources, whatever that may be, given the shift, particularly with the NCAA distribution of revenue. We know that it's down this year. At maximum, it's going to be about a third of what we normally receive. How do we respond to that? How do we make sure that we have a very strong financial foundation as we look to the future and the experience we provide our student athletes and our fans?
I usually do questions at the end, but there's one that I think is okay to drop in right now. It's about the women's water polo Final Four. Is there a chance to get that event back in a future year?
There absolutely is, but not because of this. It's not like a tit for tat, because we lost it, we'll get it. This past year, with our partnership with Visit Stockton, we submitted multiple bids to host, again, not just in women's water polo, but that was one of the bids that was submitted for multiple opportunities. We saw this fall how fantastic the national championship went for men's water polo, and we want to bring that to our university and to our community again. We couldn't do it without Visit Stockton, so I look forward to getting some kind of opportunity again in the near future.
You mentioned to me when we had chatted that you wanted to be reactive and proactive at the same time. Can you break that down and give specific terms as far as what that means for you?
Certainly. I think initially you're automatically being reactive because the environment, the situation is changing. You can't just get upset because it's changing or get frustrated. You have to get strategic. And I think, when you look at our 4 pillars, innovative is one of those 4 pillars in our athletic program, and it's certainly coming in handy right now. So the minute things started to evolve, we initially said, we put limits on what practice was all about. And then it kept evolving to the point where we had to say no physical interaction for practice. And then it evolved again, and we went to online learning, and students were expected to leave as the dorms were closing. We had to work in concert with the university when it comes to something like that for all the right reasons. And that's the reactive portion. I think the proactive is specifically how you handle it. Okay, if this is what we need to do, then how do we make the best of it? Because to me right now, our efforts very much are on the academic success for the spring term, but as important for us as an athletic program is the idea of preparing for the return. Whether it's a new normal or back to normal, however you want to phrase it, how do we use this time to advantage ourselves for that return and setting our student athletes and our programs up for success?
Well said. All right, I'm going to transition into something, and I'm going to start with a question about our men's basketball team based on last season. We didn't really get a chance to reflect back on it. I think it was the sudden COVID, thing that happened once we got back from Vegas. I think, the team would have had postseason invitations. In fact, I know they did. But can you reflect on the 23-10 season for the men's basketball team, and that far exceeded many people's expectations?
I don't think it exceeded their expectations, but it was people from the outside looking in, because we started this season in the preseason poll at 8th. We finished tied for 3rd. I can't tell you how proud I am of not only what they accomplished, but how they did it, because they really built something that was extremely special. I started the season by talking to each student athlete individually on this program. I learned so much about them, and I understood what the coaches were talking about. Damon, when he started at the beginning of the season talking about the team, he talked about how much he liked them as individuals and as a team. And he talked about how they bought in to being coached and growing as student athletes. And we saw it all season long. And they had pressure points throughout the season, and they had choices on how they responded to it. Whether it was, I don't know, triple overtime, quadruple overtime, they learned a lot along the way that they took with them. And so when you listened to Jaleel when he was on Tiger Talk, and you talk to this team about what they achieved and how they respect each other and what they believed in, it was an amazing journey for them. It truly was, and I couldn't be prouder. And to do it in the period of time that Coach Stoudemire has done it is amazing. When he walked into Pacific, they didn't have what all the other programs had. They were short on scholarships. They were short on the opportunity to recruit. This is the first year where they've had all of their scholarships available to them. And look what they did. It was fabulous, and I see the future of this program extremely bright under the circumstances.
Well, that would logically lead me into my next question. Have you approached Damon about a contract extension?
To be honest with you, I started this conversation back in February with Damon. I wanted him to understand how much he was valued as a part of our athletic program and our community, both the university and Stockton. And that's when it started. And we are to the point right now where we are just dotting our I's and crossing our T's to bring this to a close, absolutely, with a multi-year extension to his contract. And I couldn't be more excited for our basketball program and for Pacific to have Damon as our head coach in the foreseeable future. It's fantastic.
That's phenomenal. And I know that answers a lot of people's questions. I think that was what was most pressing on people's minds. I'm even seeing some, is this a clap emoji that I'm seeing? I don't know how.
There we go.
So we're seeing some excitement already. What is it about Damon that has most impressed you? And just to kind of harp on this a little more, because this is big news. What is it about the way he's approached this job and the way he's coached his team that has impressed you the most?
Okay. There are two aspects that immediately come to mind for me. One is he's taken every experience he's ever had as an athlete and as a coach, and he uses it to his advantage. Whether it's about learning from it, whether he liked the way he was treated or coached or he didn't like it, he learned from it. And he always sits back and considers when something doesn't go the way that you really want it to go, and he looks at himself first. He really owns the leadership of this program, and he sets that example. And when you combine that with the number 2 component, which for me is, I consider him to be a player's coach. He certainly is going to hold them accountable, but what I really mean by that is he understands how it feels to be in their position. He knows the best ways to push them to find the balance in what he's doing. When you talk to him, and I'm sure you've heard this, but he will consistently talk about, he works very hard to never get too high or too low, too excited, so that he sets the tone for staying focused on what they need to do and what they want to accomplish. And he helps them achieve that. And that's huge to me. It isn't about Damon. It is about his student athletes and elevating this program. I appreciate that tremendously.
He is so deserving of all the accolades and of course of the extension. And I want to give a shout out to his staff too, because his staff is just as much a part of it as Damon, and they're a special group of guys. So congratulations to Damon and the staff.
They all bring something very different to the table, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what rounds out the nature of the opportunity for our student athletes. They always have someone to turn to, depending on the nature of the situation or the question they have, and they work very well together. I agree.
Let's keep it on the coaching front and baseball. Obviously, a baseball search is underway. Can you bring us up to speed on that?
Yeah. Again, this is going to be unprecedented to try to do a search for a head coach at a time where everything is virtual. But it's really important to me that we try to eliminate the unknown for our baseball players. And right now, not knowing who their permanent head coach is very disconcerting in a time where almost everything else in their life is the unknown. So we really want to do this for these student athletes who are having a great start to their season. We have, in a very short period of time, received almost 60 applications. The posting for the position has closed now. So the real work begins to find I don't always say the best coach. What I say is the right fit. The right fit for this program, for this university, someone who's a teacher, not just a coach, who understands the relationships that are important in our world, on our campus and in our community, and who really is committed to providing leadership to this program over a period of time. I've got some seniors on this baseball program that have had 3 coaches in their span at Pacific. So we need some continuity, and we do know that. And who's prepared to provide that for us with a positive approach to what we have and what they can create, so that they really come in and make us better than they found us.
You know, it's interesting. We talk about when a coach takes over a program, especially, and I'll give you a chance to talk about Ed Moore too, who was on Tiger Talk last week. But when a coach takes over a program, talk about culture building. I'd assume it's the same for you when you're structuring the people in your athletic department, as far as building a culture among the head coaches that you hire. Is that true?
It very much is, because this is the 4th head coaching position I'll be asked to fill since I've been here. And I've been pretty consistent with what I'm looking for, which is somebody who's all in. They're not looking for their next job. They're not looking for a job to get them to the job that they really want. They want the head coaching job here at Pacific, and they are all in about what our values are, what our strengths are. And I talk a lot about this when I talk to different groups. I really feel that we are one of those programs that represents the best that intercollegiate athletics has to offer. And so who we hire is a representation of the culture. I've tried to very much honor the strength of the foundation of this program and what that culture represented, but keep building on that through whether it's a head coaching hire or administrative hire. Really important to me. When I talk to coaches, to me, their greatest resource is their student athletes. For me, it's our coaches and our staff. People are always going to be at the center, to me, of our success, no doubt about it.
We last week talked with Ed Moore. Can you tell us what you were looking for when you hired for the women's soccer position?
We didn't know it, but we were looking for Ed. No doubt about it. We didn't know it when we started the search, but absolutely, as the search progressed, he brought to us not only the obvious traits of a knowledge base and a growth in this business, but a commitment to college athletics, a commitment to an attitude and an approach that is positive and builds. For me, that was very important for our young ladies in this program. They have worked so hard over the last few years, and they are talented, but they haven't realized success that they even know they're capable of. And so we needed a shift. We needed a change in that regard with the nature of the way the next head coach approached it. I give a lot of credit to Carrie and her staff on what they were able to create, but now we need to add to that and build on that. And I've actually was able, before all of this changed, to go out and watch Ed coach. And he hadn't hired any assistant coaches yet, because that just takes time to find the right people. So he was running a practice for in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 student athletes. The positivity that was on that field, but the instruction and the teaching and the connection and the way he related to the students tells the whole story to me. And I think our student athletes represented that on the last Tiger Talk, the way they talked about the opportunity that he's providing to each of them and to that program.
Absolutely. I want to get into a couple of questions here before we let you go. And the first one is regarding the health of the budget in the athletic department. It's obviously been a talking point since right before you arrived at Pacific. Can you speak to that and how the budget has kind of evolved and the overall state of the budget at Pacific in the athletic department?
Absolutely. I'd say things have changed tremendously from 3 years ago. Someone like Coach Kolze can certainly reaffirm that. But we had a job to do when I walked through the door, which was to balance the budget. And we did that in an extremely short period of time. And then on top of that, we were asked to make another cut to our budget. And it took every single one of us in the department to make that happen in a way that we worked very hard not to impact the student athlete experience to the best of our ability. So we shaved different budgets, we cut certain opportunities, but we kept the student athlete at the center of that, and we're going to continue to do that as we move forward. Right now, when we look at this situation, we don't know exactly what the impact's going to be financially. But Wes and Robert, who manage the financial operations for us in the department have worked really hard to work on projections for this fiscal year. So we understand, what's the nature of our lost revenue? What is the nature of our cost savings? How does that balance out, if at all? And how can we use that to strengthen the budget going into FY21? So for me, something like budget management is an ongoing process. It's a little boring to people that don't get excited by a spreadsheet, but I do, guilty as charged. So it's an ongoing process, but it takes ownership at every level. So all of our head coaches, all of our budget managers have worked with us to make this come together, and they've done a great job.
I think kind of in that same vein, a lot of people were concerned that the university wasn't as committed to athletics as it needed to be. Can you change that perception for people?
I think we have been changing it, without a doubt. I spent a year trying to build relationships my very first year across campus in particular, not just with our supporters in the community, but helping them to understand us and being as transparent as possible about what we do, why we do it, and why it costs what it costs, so to speak, so that it's easy to judge if you don't fully understand the nature of what a business costs to successfully run it. And I wanted people to understand that, but even more importantly, it was about rebuilding trust, that we were going to be responsible partners as a part of this university and contribute in a variety of ways. I think helping people understand the value of an intercollegiate athletic program to our campus in particular and to this community was a part of that process. Our coaches send this message every day, but this is a form of experiential learning that impacts the lives of our student athletes infinitely, but it also impacts the culture of our campus, and we're very proud of that.
Janet, unfortunately, one of the programs that had to be cut was field hockey, and also double unfortunate. There's a field hockey field, a turf at Pacific. One of the questions we have is what ultimately can be done with that field hockey facility.
Yeah. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't say that was one of the most painful decisions I've ever had to make in my career. We had a group of student athletes and coaches that were doing everything right, but I do in the end feel it was a logical decision for us and a necessary one, and they handled it with definitive class and grace. So I appreciate that. So when we look at that field hockey field, part of the plans that we are working on at this point is a soccer stadium. And we can relocate it now, given the nature of the availability of that land. So we're working through that process, both with campus and how to set up the opportunity to fund the building of a soccer stadium, because I think it's something that will be an even stronger connector with our community. The events, in addition to our soccer teams that we can hold in there, are limitless in essence. And so I think it would be a real value added, not only to our campus, but to the community.
Last one for you, Janet, and then we'll head towards softball. I know everybody wants to help everybody in this time. Logistically, that can be tough considering the restraints that we're all under. So what can supporters and fans do to help Pacific Athletics in this time right now, not knowing what the next few months are going to look like? Because obviously there are still ways to help and there is still need.
Absolutely. To start, we're trying to continue to tell our story, the positive news about the Pacific Tigers. So you can see it on our website, you can see it on our social media. And I think at a time where people are in essence quarantined, good news is what we need to hear. So I would ask people to stay connected to us so you keep learning about our student athletes and our programs, but spread the good news as well. I'm going to tell you, I told our coaches earlier today, I started my day, unusually so, looking at some social media. And there is a good news movement out there. And there was a 97-year-old gentleman who's behaving. He's quarantined at his home. He came out on the front porch and danced to a Justin Timberlake song. I literally just smiled so big and laughed out loud because he took what could be a very frustrating situation and turned it into something fun and something positive. So they stay connected with us now. We are looking so forward to the return to campus, to a new season for our athletic program, and we want them to feel like they are a part of it because we wouldn't be where we are without them. The anticipation around this is something we want to build and create so that people literally get excited about reconnecting with our programs.
So we should look forward to you making a video on social media, dancing on your porch to some type of Timberlake song. Is that what you're saying?
You know, that has potential, without a doubt. It has potential. I think it would be better than getting the push mower out again. No doubt about it.
All right.
If I could say anything as we close up to everybody that's listening, just thank you for all the ways everyone has represented and supported Pacific Athletics. We are absolutely in this together. Please stay safe, stay healthy, stay upbeat, and we'll all get through this because we're in it together.
Thank you so much, Janet. Thanks for your answers and for your candor. And before I let you go, you want to say something nice about Kolze as I'm about to bring him on and his student athletes?
Honestly, I know you're baiting me, but I'm not going to take it because I am so proud of Coach and this program this year on the way they started the season. And they started doing some things a little bit differently in the fall. And you can see how they keep building on it, and they embraced it. And they were actually having a great time doing what they were doing, and they were getting better in the process. When you can say you're working your hardest and you're enjoying it and you're getting better, I can't ask for anything more from a program. So with that, I will turn it over to Coach Kolze.
Kolze, you okay with that?
Yeah, she's the boss. Absolutely.
Janet, again, thank you. And we'll transition to Brian Kolze and his student athletes, Madison, Kahwaty, and Madeline, Domingo. Thank you guys for joining us. Brian Kolze is in his 29th season, was in his 29th season. I guess now we go past tense. Just to give some of the credentials, was hired in 1992. I was 9 when you were hired, Kolze. Sorry to make you feel a little bit older. The winningest coach in Pacific softball history. And right now, in an unprecedented type of situation, can you, and I'll ask your student athletes the same thing, can you take us through what it was like to be on your way to, I think it was the Grand Canyon Invitational in Arizona, when you found out that wouldn't be happening?
Well, it's really odd because we're on the bus, we're heading to the Sacramento airport, and it was a trickle effect. My phone buzzes. The SEC has postponed spring sports for 2 weeks. 5 minutes later, it buzzes. The Big Ten has done the same thing. 5 minutes later, the WAC has done it, which Grand Canyon is a member of. So I pick up my phone and call the GCU head coach because we're on our way. We're the only team that isn't there yet for the tournament because it's a lot of teams spring break, so they'd already been there. And she goes, Brian, I'll call you back in 5. I'm in the office with the AD as we speak. She calls me back and she tells us to turn around. So I got to stand up and tell the kids in the bus, and it's kind of a cold response because I don't know everything other than ladies. They've postponed everything. We're returning home. I'll fill you in more as the day goes because in that hour of turning around, you have 3 coaches and a director of ops trying to cancel vans, buses, hotels, dinner plans, banquets, meals with the future president, airline tickets and everything, because really, whether we like it or not, there's a business thing to it in the immediacy. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how it went. But the worst part about it was, as the day went on, I personally had a good inclination of what was happening because we kind of went with internally as a staff, we talked, well, if everyone's postponing 2 weeks, that's probably what's going to happen with us. But we got the team. We're going to get back. We'll talk to them. We'll have a quick practice, which was a phenomenal practice, ironically. And the kids kind of circled up amongst themselves, and the leaders just said, hey, we're going to make the best situation we can out of this, and let's have a great practice. And we did. But in the middle of that, I got buzzed that the basketball tournament was canceled, and then a few minutes later, all spring championships. So I pretty much knew what was going to happen by the end of the day myself.
Madison, what was it like for you to be in that moment?
Yeah, it was pretty much of the same experience for me. I remember we were driving on the bus. We were probably an exit away, I think, and I kept seeing, like, on my phone, on Twitter and stuff, that other conferences had been suspending, maybe not canceling yet, but definitely postponing their seasons. So I kind of had an idea maybe we would get at least postponed or maybe even canceled. But then, Coach Kolze had said we're going to turn around and go back, which was pretty devastating, especially because we had a few girls from Arizona, so that we were going home to play, like, in their home cities and see their families and stuff. So that was extra upsetting for them, especially. But oh, sorry. But yeah. Other than that, yeah, it was really upsetting. We didn't really think the whole season would get canceled at that point. So, but yeah. Other than that.
Madeline, you want to jump in?
I had, pretty much the same experience that she's talking about. And looking back, you remember too, even the day before, hearing that classes would be online from now on. But I think there were definitely some worries that it would end up canceling our season, but it wasn't really at the forefront. We were just focused on being able to go out and play and looking forward to, like Maddie said, being able to visit families that a lot of our girls haven't seen in a while. And that whole day, I just remember it being a blur, honestly, of, okay, we're turning the bus around, but we're still going to have practice. There's still a possibility that we'll be able to play, that not everybody's going to get canceled. And then just throughout the day, kind of getting more and more of that news that it wasn't going to be a possibility. And even at the end of the day, when the season kind of had the final end, we were still talking about possibly practicing or possibly staying on campus to continue to get practices in until that was no longer a possibility too.
Kolze, give us an idea of the trajectory of your season. You guys were 15-10. It seemed like you guys were having a good go of it. How tough was it for you to have to pump the brakes on the season? And I know it had to be done, but how tough was it?
I think it was tougher. I've been here a long time and I've seen seasons start this way. And I think unselfishly, you have to look at it that way. And I think it was really tough, but I think it was tougher for the athletes because we had such an immediate turnaround from last year and how well they were doing things, how connected we were, how positive we were, how the culture was, how communication was open, how they were doing things. Everybody was making a contribution. Everybody was contributing to the success. And we had some really big wins. And we were obviously, there's no doubt everyone on the team felt really good about themselves and where the program was going. So the breaks were hard, but I would anticipate it was harder for those playing than those coaching because as coaches, we've gone through a lot of those ups and downs in our career. And I think for them, it was more difficult than it would be for me because the immediacy of a lost opportunity and only having that small window to be able to do it at this level, you have to feel for them, not for yourself.
Madeline, can you expand on that?
I think I would definitely agree. As much as I know the coaches were also heartbroken by the news, I think that it definitely was really hard for a lot of us to accept and kind of believe, just because, I've talked about this and I know a lot of the other returners have talked about this to our new players and to our new coaches, and just talking about how different this year has been from the past and how much closer we are as teammates and how much better of a culture we've built over this past year. I think that was a really hard thing for people to accept, that it had ended for this year and that we weren't going to have that season that we've been working so hard for and that we've been dreaming of all through fall. I think that we're still sticking together as best that we can, but I know that we definitely had to go through kind of a grieving period of, we're not going to get to play those games that we've been wanting to do.
Madison, I'll give you a chance to jump in on this too.
Yeah, I agree with both. Just that this season we had a really great start, one of our best in a while. So we had a lot of hope for this year, especially starting to go into conference, and then just to hear that it was canceled was really, really heartbreaking, especially for the seniors who they didn't really know where they were at and that they possibly played their last games without really knowing it. So that was one of the worst parts personally for me.
Brian, just to be clear, is it done? Like, are there no talks about any way to resume the season?
Finite, finished, done.
That's a bummer. I was going to ask if you thought there might be a feasible way, if they wanted to try and resume the season, but it's not going to happen.
No, it's all done. Once they canceled the spring championships, that was pretty much the final nail in regards to that. I mean, it happened very, very fast. And I'm sure when you see what's going on in the climate of the entire world, not just with sports, I don't see that door opening.
So that being said, how does this affect your recruiting and your scheduling for next year? And I think everybody's pretty much in this same boat. It's going to be really, really bizarre.
Well, I think first with the recruiting part, we already have next year's athletes coming in. We're working, on the future of that. But right now we're really limited to what we can do with that, which is, texts and phone calls. And scheduling wise, it's interesting because we have to take into the dynamics of the big picture, financial adjustments for universities, not just University of the Pacific, but, working right now, the immediacy of what the seniors may or may not want to do, then that you talk about roster sizes for a year, which we know it's an aberration, but it's going to be the norm, at least potentially for a year. So you have to, put that into context of the finances, the travel, how many travel, all those types of things for next year come into play. And right now, trying to fill a schedule is difficult because it's really so coaches are really, aren't connected with each other. They're trying to take care of their teams and things like that. And what used to take a phone call, it sometimes takes 2 weeks to hear back to try and fill a scheduling hole or something, just because everybody is on such a different schedule because, the young ladies in the program, if you need to talk to a young lady, well, not everyone's on the same online system of when they're doing classes and stuff. So it's just what used to take a day or two is literally sometimes taking up to 10 days to try and fill a gap as we try and work with that. But you also have taken the financial ramifications that potentially even Janet can't give us all the answers today, but we have to anticipate. We have to be smart and anticipate. We can't be stupid in our decision making, I guess is the best way to put it.
Has it been strange to try and kind of keep tabs and manage your student athletes from afar in a quarantine state?
It has. They're so busy sometimes with school and stuff that you try not to be overbearing with them. I'm going to let the two young ladies talk about some things that they have interjected with the team, and they're going to interject to try and keep this bond going because they're part of our leadership council and they've created a project to run with. I just started by doing a video of me walking in the orchard and assigning a kid each day to send a video out to everybody on the team. So one kid a day is sending out a minute blurb or something just to stay in touch. So nothing's overbearing for them. It's doable and trying different ways to stay connected.
Madeline, you're the junior, so I'll let you go first. Madison's a sophomore, but can you expand on what Kolze was just saying as far as keeping in touch and being part of that leadership group?
Yeah, I would say that we've actually done a pretty good job. I was a little worried about, the weirdness of not being with them at this time when at this point in the season, it's usually, we're each other's best friends. We're each other's every day. So it was definitely, I knew, going to be a weird transition to only connecting with them through phone. But I will say we do send each other the little 1 minute blips, the videos of how we're doing. And it's cool because each person, when we send it in, it's a little bit personalized. So we had one of our freshmen send one in today that was a cooking tutorial. And it's just nice to see everybody and get to hear from them personally. As a leadership council, we've also decided to read a book together as a team. So we're going to start that this upcoming month and then continue to check in and talk about what we've read, what's inspired us so far. And I know that I'm also working with other people on the team to continue our old tradition of making senior scrapbooks and sending them letters of just talking about our year together and how much we'll miss them. Because I think it's still really important. Like Maddie said, they didn't get that end, that last game they knew was going to be their final one. So I think it's important that we continue to honor them and show that, they're still a part of the team and we stay connected.
Maddie, you go ahead now with that.
All right. Yeah, I think they both pretty much touched on it, but the videos that we've been sending back and forth have definitely been helpful just to see what everyone's up to and make sure everyone is doing well. And again, with the book that we're planning to read this summer, I think that's going to keep us really connected and keeping that open communication with everyone. It's going to be really really big in this longer time apart.
And what was the book again?
It's called Chop Wood, Carry Water. It's like about
Nice.
an inspirational type, like team building type of book.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Hmm.
Kolze, are you impressed with the way we can keep in touch nowadays with the video? Like, you would have had Morse code back in your day if you were quarantined. Like, we actually get to be face to face with all these people.
Smoke signals.
Nice.
No,
Nice.
yeah, it's good. Hey, I'm not gonna lie to you. Some of it I don't figure out as fast as the others because I wasn't raised on
I'm
it.
impressed you're here. I'm gonna put it out there. Like, you
But
were
it's,
great yesterday, right on time.
It really is. It's obviously it's a good thing. It's not as personal, but it certainly beats a phone or, you know, emergency FaceTime or something if you can do something more substantial like this. No, it's outstanding.
I want to go back to the student athletes, and I'll start with Maddie this time. How are you guys managing to stay in shape and work out and keep as much in game shape as you can, which I know is tough. There are a lot of limitations for us all now as far as going out and getting a workout in.
Yeah, it's definitely tough with all the gyms being closed and everything, but just trying to stay active really any way I can. Just getting out, even just walking my dog at the neighborhood or going on walks with my family or doing at-home workouts, you know, with your body weight and everything like that. It's just not ideal, but just making do with what you can.
Madeline?
Yeah, pretty much any way you can is really the key phrase there. Just I've been doing a lot of bike rides, but I know walks with the family, the home workouts. I know a lot of our teammates have been doing yoga and they've been loving that. Even just setting up a net in the backyard and hitting off a tee like the good old rec ball days. Just any way that we can, trying to stay in shape.
Another question here for the student athletes. This is from one of our participants. How is remote learning going for you and your professors? It seems like everybody's making the most of a tough situation. Madeline, I'll start with you.
I'm not gonna lie, the transition to online learning has definitely been a difficult one. I'm a little bit closer to boss on the tech savviness, so I definitely do miss the classroom experiences. And I think the online transition, I understand that it's also been really tough for the professors too, of trying to convey the same messages and the same learning through a different platform than they had been planning to. But I think it has been a difficult transition, and at the same time, we're getting better at it. We're learning it together alongside our professors. And I know that the people that are in the athletic department also care a lot. Like Taylor's actually reached out to me to check in on how I've personally been doing because she heard that I was struggling a little bit. And so I think the support has definitely helped me stay motivated and stay focused on making the best out of the transition.
Madison, how about you?
Yeah, it's been an adjustment definitely for me too. Just I'm similar to Madeline. Just I learn the best in the classroom face to face, as I'm sure most people do. But yeah, it's been an adjustment, but I found that my professors have been really helpful too, even though they're trying to navigate this as well. They've also set up like Zoom meetings for their office hours or been really open to reaching out and asking any questions. So that's been really, really helpful in this process too.
We have a question for Kolze. What are some of the key points you share about Pacific when recruiting student athletes that attracts them to join your team? And part two of that question, how many new players do you have coming in next season?
Okay, first off, I think on the selling of Pacific, a lot of it has to do with the opportunity they're going to have, the academics, I think the culture, and one thing we do pride ourselves on is that when it comes to the academics, it's a place you can study what you want and we'll work around it. There's a climate out there that is not allowing people to do the same things academically, limiting majors, those types of things, and that's not what we're about. We're about you getting what you came here for, and we'll make the adjustments. It's not always easy, but at the same time, that's what they're here for. You know, also, obviously, there's resources and the coaches that care and the resources that they care. And I personally feel that it's a family type atmosphere that does a really good job of taking care of you if you take advantage of all your resources. Regarding next year, I have 6 new athletes coming in as of this point.
Madison. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Coles.
We have an infielder, we have a catcher, we have an outfielder, we have 2 pitchers, and we have a utility player.
Awesome. Thank you. Madison, I'm going to ask you to kind of expand on what Coach Kolze said, and if you had to pitch a recruit on Pacific, how would you do so?
Right, I would say a lot of the same things, but I think what sold me the most is the academic side of it too, is just knowing that I had the freedom to choose to study what I wanted, and the balance, and just knowing that it was also a great academic school, but we could also compete in our conference and compete every year to get into regionals as well. So that was the big thing for me.
And I'm sure it didn't hurt that you're from Livermore.
Right, close by too.
What about Madeline? Can you answer that same question? You're from Fountain Valley, which is down by Huntington Beach.
Yep, about a 6-hour drive away. So definitely a little bit different of a community. If I were pitching, I would agree with a lot of what Kolze and Kahwaty said, of just, it's about being a family and about having a home here. I'm not as close as Maddie is to her house, so like it meant a lot to me to be able to settle in and have people that I felt like I could talk to and that were supporting me, even though they'd only known me maybe a year or 2. And I think for me, the academics was a really big portion, the softball and the potential for growth. I think, seeing as even though our season did cut short, the progress that we've made compared to last year, and I think the future continuation of our progress and of how much we grow as players and as a team, I think that is definitely something to really be excited for as a person coming into our program.
Well said. Kolze, I have an interesting question for you, and I am fascinated as to your answer as well. How has the landscape of college softball changed during your career, with football conferences getting more TV money and investing that money in sports like softball?
Well, the landscape obviously has changed tremendously. When I first started here, truthfully, there was probably about 150 less Division I softball programs than there are now. Those 150 that have added are all at football schools or major BCS programs. Because when I started, there was no SEC. The Big 12 didn't have as many teams. The ACC didn't have a conference. Conference USA wasn't around. So if you just look at that, it's changed a lot. The growth of the sport has been tremendous. But, I mean, I'm not going to lie, the bigger get bigger. And you just have to deal with that. But at the same time, that landscape still helps you grow as well, because you get opportunities to play against people. One thing that we've always prided, we've always played a pretty good schedule, and we weren't afraid to play anybody. And there's a lot of losses on the overall record over 28 years too, on people that you played, but your athletes want to play those people. And it's not about what's done on paper. It's still about what's done on the field. But it's hard in regards to that, because yes, they get a lot, and they've gotten phenomenal facilities and things like that, but that's the reality of it. And you just control what you can control. And that's kind of where we're at right now, especially with what we're going through. Because I've been on the phone with coaches. I've been on the phone with the Florida coach, the Clemson coach, and the UCLA coach all in the last 2 days about some things. And don't kid yourself, with what we're going through right now, they're going through some of the same things that we all are, not just here at University of the Pacific, trying to figure some things out, because even though those are marquee name schools, those coaches are dealing with some of the same stuff we are right now.
Kolze, another question for you. You are the dean, of course, of coaches at Pacific right now in your 29th season, as we mentioned. What has the support from the community meant to your program over the many years you have been at Pacific?
Well, I think you know, I think Janet has actually learned a little bit about that over the last couple of years, just with fundraising and things that we do and so forth. But I really think we couldn't be where we're at. Our facility couldn't be where it's at without community support. I'm not just saying that for our program. You know, we went through a transition there when the city of Stockton was filing bankruptcy, but somehow the softball program raised over $600,000 with the help of athletics to basically redo the entire facility. But I'm very thankful because there's a lot of people out there that really care about the university and care about the athletes, not only in the softball program, but in all programs, because they also know the young men and young ladies in these programs work very hard. Everything is not handed to them. Everybody isn't on a full scholarship, you know, those types of things. They know the reality of it. I think our community knows the reality of it. And, but none of us could do it without them. I wouldn't be able to have been here this long or done some things in the program without the help of all the people in the community.
Yeah, you're also a hell of a coach, man. Don't sell yourself short. I'm going to give the student athletes the last word here. And I just want to get, this is a perspective question. I mean, Coach Kolze mentioned, you know, you guys do work hard, and as fun as it is to play, it is also a grind, and it's at times hard work. I see what you guys go through firsthand. Does this moment in history give you guys a new appreciation for being able to get out there and play and do what you do? And I'm going to start with Madeline, who's the older of the two, the junior.
I mean, for sure, I think that gives me a new perspective, because I've had a lot of friends with a lot of different experiences, and you hear those stories of an injury or of something happening where, you know, they played their last game and didn't know it. And I'm fortunate enough to have the opportunity to come back next year and know that I have hopefully another season to come back and have the last word on the field. But I think it definitely makes me appreciate how much softball has given me and how many opportunities, and just like kind of revisiting the joy that it always gives me. And it's one of those things that you appreciate it more once it's been taken away. So I'm really excited to get back on the field, and I think it does change my perspective.
Madison?
Yeah, you definitely appreciate it more once it's gone, I would say. Definitely in season, it is a grind, like you said. Every day at practice, class, it's kind of nonstop. So when it's all taken away, just like that is very shocking, I'd say. But yeah, it makes it all that more special once we come back next year. So I'm excited.
Well, I was excited to have talked with you guys today. I hope I share everybody's sentiments. Like, I look forward to this now every Tuesday. It's really been kind of a nice community that we have here gathering on Tuesdays. And I feel like we're not missing a beat outside of the obvious, which is not being on campus and being able to give each other hugs. But next week, that being said, we are going to jump in the pool. We have James Graham, and we have Caitlin Harrington from Swim and Dive. So we're going to go aquatics theme next week. It's going to be next Tuesday at the same time, right here on Zoom. So be sure to look out for that link. It'll be tweeted out by many of us. Thanks again to Janet Lucas, our Director of Athletics, Brian Kolze, Madeline Domingo, and also Madison Kahwaty. Thank you guys so much. I hope everybody enjoys these. I hope everybody stays safe. And I will look forward to seeing you all next week right back here. So thanks so much for coming. Hope you enjoyed.